Welcome to Noble Voices, the podcast spotlighting the storytellers, champions, and changemakers shaping our industry with integrity, empathy, and purpose. I'm your host, Josh Rhett Noble, actor, advocate, sometimes outlaw in a video game, but most importantly, someone who believes that noble work deserves to be heard. Today's guest is someone whose belief in others has opened doors, built careers, and quietly elevated the heart of this business for over a decade. Gina Manfredi is the director of the on-camera department at DDO Artists Agency in New York City, and I've had the honor of calling her my agent since 2017. From her roots in musical theater to her time working with major casting offices like CBS and Nickelodeon, Gina brings a deep understanding of both artistry and advocacy. She represents a dynamic roster of talent across film, television, and national campaigns, and she does it with a rare blend of strategy, sincerity, and fierce support. A two-time Heller Award winner and three-time nominee for Commercial Agent of the Year, she's not just building resumes, she's building lives in the arts. Today, Gina shares insight on the evolving world of casting, what makes a voice truly stand out, and how actors and agents can build relationships rooted in trust and long-term growth. Whether you're just starting your journey or deep in the hustle like me, this conversation is full of honest advice and real heart. Gina, welcome to Noble Voices.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
I am thrilled to have you on this show. I've told you before, as soon as I thought of the concept for the podcast, I'm like, I have to have Gina on here. So I'm thrilled to have you today.
Thank you. Well, I am honored to be here.
Well, I want to start off saying you spent years helping artists bring their stories to life. What first sparked your love of talent representation, and what's kept you passionate about this type of work?
Yeah, my very first memory of anything relating to this industry is watching a stage show. My mom took me to see my very first show on stage when I think I was like 2 or 3 years old. And so I never remember a time in my life when I wasn't excited about theater. So that was like my first thing that I just like was so in awe of and fell in love with. And I just kept asking to go back and see more shows ever since then and continue to till now. And so I have always loved just like seeing that magic on stage happening. And so there was really never like a question or a conversation about what I would do for work. Once I got to that point in my life where I started thinking about that, I knew for sure I wanted to work in the entertainment world in some capacity. I didn't know exactly what, because of course that's such a broad thing to say, but I knew for sure I wanted to be surrounded by the arts. And so I went to school for arts administration, and that's basically like the business of entertainment. And so as I was studying there, I know that I learned best by like being immersed in things and like being able to just be surrounded by and observe things that I can absorb and be part of, like in a hands-on way. And so I was very busy with school, of course, like everyone is while they're in college, but I'm also someone who, like, if I have a little window of time open in my schedule, I need to fill it. And I was like, I think I have a window of time where I can do an internship. I think I can squeeze that into my schedule. So I applied for internships, and then the majority of the internships I ended up doing were in casting. And that was so eye-opening for me. And I was so lucky because the people who were my supervisors during my internships were so generous with their time and so welcoming towards me. And I was sort of like immersed in the process. And I love the process of casting. And I was so like amazed that I was sitting in these audition rooms watching people audition for these incredible projects. And they're so talented. And I also found myself when they would leave the room, like if they hadn't come back in for a while, like looking up, like, where did they end up? What did they end up working on? Where did they go? What are they doing now? And sort of getting a little bit invested in that way into like what these talented people, what their journeys were looking like. And that sort of intrigued me that there were agents on their team and managers on their team. So like they had representation and a team around them who were facilitating these opportunities and calling casting and saying, here's why you should see our client. And then no matter what the outcome of that audition was that I just watched, the agent was going to be there for the next step, whatever that was, whatever was next. And so I got really intrigued by being part of that, sort of like every step of the way, that journey. And so that's what sort of prompted me to consider looking into work in agencies. So eventually the opportunity to work at DDO came about, and I'm still at DDO now, and I'm very grateful for that. And I think what keeps me passionate still to this day is just that there's always a sense of possibility, always a refreshed, new sense of potential each day. Like I could start working on a new project on any given day. I could meet a new client who I'm so hopeful for and so excited to work with on any given day. I could have a client who've been working with for a really long time, but now they're up for this role that's just perfect for them and they could get this role and it could be like their moment. And so there's just always a sense of possibility, always a sense of potential. Everything moves at a very fast pace. And so there's just always something new happening and always something to look forward to. And I think that's what keeps me really passionate day to day.
I love that. It's a beautiful story too. And it just goes to show that you found your path where you're still enjoying the arts. I mean, you from the casting side before to previously, I'm assuming you were an entertainer as well, since you love musical theater. Did you sing?
Yes, I did. Never ever professionally or anything, but I did, in school, I did all of the musicals. I sang in college. I did all of the choirs and everything. So yes, I loved that part of my life too. But then I sort of like turned and went on the side where now I'm on the business end. But yes, I love to sing still to this day.
I mean, that kind of leads me to saying this too, because you and I we started with a deep love of musical theater. And I think that's something that's sort of embedded in you forever. And that magic of like live storytelling, which can be different when it's on camera, obviously, from the stage to the screen. So how has that early passion shaped the way you approach on-camera work today? Do you find yourself still looking for that same sort of spark for, within the actors and the projects that you champion?
Absolutely. I do. I love still to this day. I have the privilege of working with actors who are theater performers and are also working on screen, and you're one of them. And I love that so much. I love working with actors who have that strong theater foundation, who I just have so much respect for theater performers and the work that they do on stage, and then also how they bring it to the screen as well. And so I'm always so excited by that. And ultimately, yes, when I think about like what that spark is, it's like, I watch an artist performing on stage and I'm just like, I can't imagine anyone else doing it this way. And of course, there are incredible performances of that role probably prior, and there will be so many after. But like when it's right in front of you and you're just like, no one has done it like this before. I love that. And that can be applied to the screen as well. Like when I do workshops and showcases to meet new clients, for example, there are people who come in and they do a scene that I've definitely seen before. But there are times when I'm like, I feel like this is the first time I'm watching this because I've never seen someone do it like this. And so I think that's the spark. And like I said, you can see that spark across all the mediums. And that's what I'm always looking at. That individuality is what I love. And like I said, you can see that in pretty much any art form, on stage or on screen.
I love that. So, I mean, it's something that I always say to whoever's listened to this podcast has probably heard my story of my trajectory changing. And honestly, that's how I came to know you, because when my mother was diagnosed with cancer the third time and she moved into New York with me, up to New York, I was unable to tour and do shows, and most of the work was that way. So I was specifically looking for an agency I could be with that would just represent me for on-camera work, because I knew it'd be difficult to sign with a new agency and be like, hi, sorry, I can't go anywhere. So that's was so beautiful about meeting you. And I always say, as an empath of a person, that I immediately knew I wanted to work with you, and I'd hoped you wanted to work with me.
Yeah.
It was a very emotional time in my life because of my mother too. So I'm just to throw that into to say I'm thankful for you, having my back, supporting me, and landing me some wonderful jobs along the way.
Of course. No, I remember the day we met, and I don't always remember like the exact day, but I do remember meeting you, and I remember being so excited to meet you, and you made me laugh. Like I remember you were so funny with your scene, but like you were just so kind and so easy to talk to, and I just remember like I felt the same way leaving. I was like, good person, incredible talent. Like I was so excited. So no, I felt the exact same way when we met, and I cannot believe it's been so many years now, but it's flown by.
Yes, and I appreciate you. I just had to interject that and say that.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for looking out for the theater boys and gals and in between as well. Because a lot of times, I remember when you first start out, especially, a lot of times theater people can be seen as, oh, you do theater, so you're not on camera, which is, absurd in this day and age. So I used to hide how much theater I did in the beginning of my on-camera career because I was afraid they'd be like, oh, you're a stage actor. But now it's something I embrace a lot more because a lot of it is accepted more and is incorporated into the on-camera side of things, which has been beautiful to see.
Absolutely. No, I love it. I'll always champion the theater people for sure.
I love it. So, obviously, this podcast is all about noble voices. So artists using their craft and with empathy and purpose. As an agent, how do you define noble work in today's landscape?
I think it's being a positive force in people's lives, because I think that can apply to agents in that you can be the support system that someone needs, to sort of help them make their dream come true and be there for them throughout ebbs and flows of their lives. Sort of like, what we were just talking about, like people need support. And especially I think this industry, you need that. And so I think, like, as a representative, if you can use your work to do that, I think that's good work to be doing. And on the artist side, I would say telling meaningful stories that reach an audience, make people feel less alone, or bring joy to someone's day. Like that, you never know when it could just, like, either change someone's day, change someone's week, or maybe their life. You just don't know. And so I think that's what it should be all about. I think that's what art should be used for. And I think that's like what all the work we do every day should be used for. And I think too that it should go beyond just while you're working. Like, it should be how you treat people behind the scenes as well. When the cameras are not rolling, are you treating people with kindness and respect and professionalism? I think that's equally as important.
I love that. It's very true. I always say work begets work. If you're easy to work with, you're going to continue working.
Yeah.
And you can't just be a good actor. You can't just be a good talent agent. You have to have empathy and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes beyond the screen or on stage. And that's a beautiful place to start from and to come from as an agent. So again, thank you for being that type of agent, because not everyone has that. That's something a lot of people realize, that they don't have that sincerity with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've worked together since 2017, which is crazy for me to think of. But the one thing I've always admired is how you've always blended honesty with your support. And what do you think makes for a strong agent-actor relationship?
Communication is like the number one element that I think of. I think it's so important to have clear communication, and that needs to come from both sides, right? Like, the actor should feel comfortable contacting their agent, reaching out with questions or ideas or strategizing or whatever's on their mind. Like that, your agent should be accessible to you in that way and approachable in that way, where you are truly a team and you can have real conversations. And then similarly, of course, we as the agent expect our actors to be reliable and responsive and professional and conduct themselves well in audition rooms and on set. And so it's a definite team effort. And I think one of the key elements of being a strong team is strong communication. So I would say, like, those two things kind of combine into one answer, but the communication and the awareness that we are a team and we need to work together and understand that, yes, as the agent, we represent you as the actor, but at the same time, we're sort of representing each other. And so it really is very much like the awareness, like that we're in this together, and it's important to represent each other well and communicate well.
I love that, especially because the honesty and communication, that's with any relationship, from romantic to friendship to anything. And from a professional standpoint, it really shows that you could be on the same page with someone. And if you're combative against who's trying to help you, it's never going to work.
Right.
So
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's what's wonderful. And I mean, that's sort of, we touched on that too, understanding that relationship. But one thing I want to ask you in this ever evolving industry, because it's been never ending. Obviously, we had COVID, we had the writer strike, we had SAG strike, all these things in the industry, even now digital world, TikTok, everything that's happening. What are the qualities you see in actors who build lasting relationships or lasting careers? Like, what is it that you're seeing that seems like this career is going to take off and keep going?
I would say it's resilience, because there is so much change and it's going to continue to change. And I mean, we've seen like an extreme amount of change, like you said, over the past 5 years or so, of course, and that's been really hard on everyone. But the actors who are really resilient and sort of reframe any setbacks as opportunities instead of just saying, well, this is unfamiliar or this is uncomfortable. Like, I think there are people who reframe that and say, okay, well, I could look at this as an opportunity to either pivot or grow or take it as a learning opportunity. And I see those people, rising above the really hard times that come around, or just things that could be looked at as setbacks, but they sort of reframe it, and I see people succeeding when they do that. And sort of on that note too, like them being up for a challenge is also just like the continual training that they're willing to do too. I think, sometimes I think people think, well, I'm working now and I've got this, I'm booked, so I don't need to train anymore. But I think training, it should always be happening. I think there's always something new to learn. So I think people who have that mindset as well of like, I'm up for the challenge, I'm up to learn something new, or just sharpen something that I already do know and that I'm already good at. I think that leads to longevity, just always staying sharp and being up for pivoting or up for a challenge that might arise, and reshaping it to be like, well, this could either be something that totally halts me in my tracks, or it could be an opportunity to grow. And I think that leads to long careers.
Right. I agree. And I think you can't be complacent, and especially because it is ever changing, the industry, beyond all the things that were thrown away when it comes to the legality of the union, and as well as pandemics. It's ever changing how people consume what we do as artists. So obviously, from TV and film used to be like going to the movies was the biggest thing ever, but so many people now sit at home and stream something. So we have an endless amount of entertainment being thrown at everyone that's going to consume it. And so how do you stay on top of the bar of being the person chosen in all those different facets? And just like you said, I think training is so important. Sometimes I return to things, I'm like, oh, I feel good about this, but then I'll sit down and return just to the basics of something, even like theater training for like, I have an audition coming up. I'm going to go back to the steps of what I would do to prep this that maybe I'd skipped some in the past. You realize, oh, wow, I'm glad I retouched upon this.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't mean that you're not already great at it. It's just sort of like you're refreshing something and staying sharp at it. And
you don't want to get rusty. And the thing is, and I always say kids these days, but with social media and everything changing, it's come from landscape, videos coming, all these things that are completely new. You have to stay on top of both that, the industry, as well as marketing yourself, which can be difficult for people that don't necessarily want to throw themselves out there. But everything is a connection, everything is learning, and that is the opposite of being complacent, right? So I feel like that's exactly what you said is what I would feel as well. It's like you just have to be ready to go roll with the punches to see what's next.
Exactly. Yeah.
And with that too, so you've worked across genres and all these different platforms, from commercials, films, series regulars. What's something actors should stop stressing about when it comes to bookings?
I would say, okay, so I think when you get an audition, right, you've beat the odds already by being selected to audition for the project. So if you get a call back and you're put on hold and maybe you're doing chemistry reads or testing for a project, like you have earned every single one of those steps. And so by the time you get to like the booking, I think it's, you've earned that. You have shown that you deserve to be there. So many people believed in you to get to that point of booking a job. So it's such a long process. It's so, there's so many steps to that point. And so when you get there, I think it's just important to be in that mindset of, I've earned this, I belong here. And the same thing for, honestly, at the stage of getting an audition, it's like, I earned this moment. Something spoke to someone, and they want to see me audition for this, no matter what happens after the audition. It's like every moment you've earned, the work that you've done up to that point has earned you this moment. And so once you do book something, I think you deserve to say, yeah, I belong here, not with arrogance at all, but with an awareness that you earned that and you've done the work to get to that point. And now you're ready. There's a lot of work ahead and you're ready for it and you're prepared and you can do it. And that's what I think. I think it's just sort of about a mindset. And I think that's a really healthy way to think about the whole process from getting the audition all the way to the booking.
Right, because there are so many people now getting seen, which is new because of so much of it is self-tape. So back in the day, I always use this story where I would go in with, to have an audition via you, and it'd be like, sup, literally, like I would just say me like a one word something, but it was still in person. And a lot of people don't realize that because so many things are now self-tape.
Yeah.
But having that, just getting that audition is a huge win. Because there are endless amounts of talent in this industry, endless. And so you have that against you, in quotations against, it just is what it is. Mm-hmm. Plus you have the reality of, all these different, how you may look different. They may want, I was once in for a character with you for Law & Order SVU. as I believe it was first a medic or something. And it went well. And I remember the director at the time, Fred Burner, going, "That's it. That's the only line he has." So then they had me change roles to a named role, which was Officer Bobby Johnson, and come back in. And like, you just never know. So a role that was supposed to be a male ended up being a female for someone else who ended up getting the role I was in for. And then I got a larger role because of that experience.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
you never know.
No.
You never know what anything is. And the other thing I always say to, because I coach students as well, in this industry, there's no other industry where let's say, if you look at the data of auditions that so many of us get, let's say you had 200 auditions in like a year span and you only book 6. There's no other industry where you had done 200 interviews and only
Right?
6 odds. Like, so that's the pressure that as artists we're putting on ourselves. Like, something's wrong with me. Like, I wish I was thinner. I wish I was like thicker. I wish I was something else. It's all that's silly.
Yeah.
I call it the logical side, and I'm guilty of it as well, especially if it's something I really wanted, and then I see what happens with the role or whatever. It's beyond our control. So the logical side has to go, I am doing very well. The fact I landed this audition, if you got a callback, wow, that you've been pinned, wow. Like, there's so much access to talent now that was not there because so much of it is self-tape. And I think that that's a wonderful thing of an advice to give people. And I have to give it to myself continuously.
Yeah. Of course.
Nowhere else. I mean, imagine like you're like interviewing to be, I don't know, like an attendant or something, just any sort of job. Then you had 200 interviews.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very specific to this world for sure. It's very specific, and it's only human to feel, like you said, where you have to remind yourself. But once you do remind yourself, you sort of are like, oh yeah, actually, you should be really proud of this.
Yeah. I mean, that leads perfectly into this question I have. So obviously auditions and self-tapes have changed so much since you and I met in 2017. What advice would you give actors to stay connected and grounded in the work, even in a digital age where it's like you're set up in your apartment at, New York, and it's just you and a camera and a reader?
Yeah. Well, sort of touching upon what we just kind of talked about in my answer to the last question, I would say, first of all, remember that someone saw you and wanted to see you do this audition. So I think what people feel like is missing is like a connection. They feel like, wow, when I used to go in the room, there was this, I got to connect a bit more. And I understand that for sure. But it's because, you're not in the same space and time as the person who wants to see you audition for this. But there was a little bit of a connection that's already begun by them looking at you and saying, we want to see a tape from them. So in a sense, it's different. And I'm not trying to make it sound like it's the exact same as being in the room, but there is a little bit of a connection starting there by just being seen and having someone see your potential and saying, we'd love to see a tape. Now, I think a way to frame audition tapes is that it's a chance to explore the role. It's a chance to hopefully continue this conversation. Hopefully it's the first part of an ongoing conversation where you make really strong choices. Maybe it's imperfect, but maybe that's what makes them want to work with you a little bit. Maybe you send it in and maybe it's like, oh, we loved this choice. This wasn't the direction we were going, but can you try it again this way? And then that kind of brings you to that connection that you were hoping to have in the first place of being in the room, and getting adjustments and getting notes. So if you give a really strong tape as like your version of, here's how I see this role, here's me exploring this, and hopefully we can have a conversation about it at one point if you have notes from me, kind of thing, without actually saying that, but by giving a really strong tape that could lead to that. And so I think it's kind of nice to think about the tape as the very first part of the beginning of a hopefully long conversation. And hopefully it will lead to someone connecting with you again, the way that they connected with you when they wanted to see you for the tape. Now they've seen your tape, they want to connect with you further, and then hopefully it leads to more. And so I know that's probably a lot easier said than done to think of it that way, but I do believe that, I've seen that happen. So I do believe that it can happen.
Yeah, I love that. And obviously in the digital age, there are some people getting auditions that would not have gotten it if they only had to see X amount of people in person.
Yes, that's true.
It has opened up the opportunity to so many other different people. Yes, it's increasing the talent pool, which makes it a little bit more difficult. But I'm happy that people that maybe could not have been seen before are now getting seen.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
obviously, there's always going to be a connection you feel if it's in person. Coming from a theater background, I get that. The
Yeah.
energy you feel in the room is very different than you at home filming something. But like
Mhm.
you said, it's almost like it's like a pre-read, obviously.
Right.
It's the beginning of a relationship, which is
Yeah.
what you're talking about. And if
Mm.
they see something within that tape, that's still going to want them to bring you back in.
Exactly.
And to, other people talk about, well, I can't get feedback of changing how I'm doing. Well, if they like what they're seeing and they want to see it a different way, then they will reach out and do that.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
that has happened to me. I can attest that has
Yes.
happened. I have booked from
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
I think it could be scary for people because they feel like they're submitting into the void. A lot of times actors do.
Yeah.
And I think it's comforting to hear your side of it,
Yeah.
to know that it can feel that way, but it's really not.
Yeah.
It's something that you can't control. So as we've said, you're going to have to roll with the punches. You can't be complacent. It is what it is. It saves time and money for everyone in the industry. And hopefully one day there'll be more in person later down the road for chemistry reads or whatever you need to do. But in the meantime, be like, oh, wow, I'm getting seen when so many
Mhm.
other people aren't. And I
Right.
think that's very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what I wanted another question I want to ask you, what is it about the future of storytelling that excites you, and what kinds of projects or performers are you hoping to champion more in the next chapter?
I get excited when I think about innovations or new developments that could potentially lead to reaching even wider audiences, reaching more people, making art maybe even more accessible to people, or just opening people's eyes to like people who maybe never thought of themselves as a fan of a certain art form, but now there's something new or intriguing that's happening, that sort of makes them explore it, and then now they're consuming art that they otherwise wouldn't have. So I do think that that's something that sort of excites me when I think about like the way that the future could go, is that maybe there could be more engagement, or more accessibility, like art meeting people where they are, where it makes it maybe even easier to consume art. I think that could be a plus of the way that storytelling is heading, for sure, is just sort of because the more people who consume art, the more connected we become as a world. Like, when you all go see a show together, you're all there for the same thing, you're all connecting over what you just saw, like that, and sometimes it's people who would have never been in the same room together otherwise, but this brought them together. So I do think that that's something that is exciting to think about for the future. And as far as something that like I haven't done yet that I'd love to do one day, is I think about, I just love music. I think about how I love watching stories that are about either musical artists or just about music in general, or just that use music to elevate a story. I love that. And I think it would be amazing to one day, work with someone who is a musical artist first and foremost, but is also an actor and is using their music to elevate a story. Again, music itself is a story, right? It tells a story. So it could also be their music is, helping the story along, or vice versa. The story is helping their, elevate their music. There's so many different ways it could go, but I just love that intersection. And I think to work on something that blends those, two things that I really love would be such a dream for me. So I don't even know what that exactly would look like right now, but I would love to do something like that. And it's nothing that's never been done before. It's been done so many times and done beautifully, but I've never been like intricately involved in it. And I would love to take part in something like that someday.
I love that, and obviously call me if that happens.
Oh, word. Absolutely.
Please get me submitted for whatever this music and television collaboration would be. Obviously, because we've both come from that world, and that would be marrying everything that I feel is very important to me artistically.
Yeah.
So I love that is something that you want to do in the future. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I will definitely, I'll keep you updated.
All right. So this is my final question. It changes slightly per whoever I am actually interviewing. But
Okay.
if you could whisper one truth into the ear of every actor trying to make it, what would it be?
I would say to remember why you started in the first place, and remember the version of you who decided, like the moment you decided, this is what I want. This is what I want to do with my life. I'm passionate about this. I'm ambitious. I'm ready to do this. Because it can sometimes, you lose that a little bit. Sometimes I think we all do when we get tired or we're feeling discouraged, or you kind of start to feel like, okay, I'm auditioning and nothing's clicking. And that's totally a normal response to sort of feel a little bit discouraged sometimes. But I think once you bring yourself back to, well, why am I doing this? And I think it sort of shifts your perspective. Like, there was a time when I was dreaming about auditioning and auditioning and auditioning, and now I'm doing that. And so I think perspective is everything. And when you find gratitude in the grind, it sort of brings you back to the joy and why you do it. And I think that's what it's all about. That's why you started. So I think remembering that and bringing yourself back to that version of you that's still in there will always help you find the joy again.
That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you. Something I need to tell myself half the time too.
Oh, I mean, me too. We all do. I really believe that every human being has those moments where they're just like, whoa, I am overwhelmed, or wow, am I tired? But you keep showing up for a reason. So I think you just have to remind yourself, what is that reason? Why do I keep showing up for this? And kind of you're like, oh yeah, okay. I'm okay now. You sort of reset in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Gina Manfredi, thank you so much for being a guest on Noble Voices. You know I adore you, I appreciate you, and I thank you for championing artists across the board. And I'm excited for whatever's next for you and next for me and next for anyone that has the chance to work with you.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much again. I really appreciate you having me. And I, of course, I'm honored to work with you. And for all of these years, I can't believe it. Time has flown, but I'm very honored always very proud to say that you're my client. So thank you. And I'm honored to be here. And I'm excited to keep listening to your podcast episodes. Like, I will be a loyal listener. Thank you.
I love it. Where can people find you social media wise if they'd like to follow you?
I'm just my name at Gina Manfredi. And yeah, it's pretty much just Instagram. I don't really do anything. I'm not really like a big poster person, but you can totally follow me on there. That's where you'll find me. Yeah, I'm not super exciting on social media, but that's my name, Gina Manfredi.
All right. Thank you so much, Gina.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.
I'm Josh Rhett Noble, and I believe in the power of a noble voice. Whether you're on stage, behind the camera, or sitting quietly in the audience, your voice matters, and I want to hear it. So if you enjoyed today's episode, I invite you to subscribe, share this with someone who needs to know they're not alone in this journey. Follow me on Instagram at Josh Rhett Noble and at Noble Voices Podcast, and drop me a note. Tell me who you'd like to hear on the show, or better yet, tell me your noble story. Until next time, keep speaking with courage, living with purpose, and listening for the noble voices around you.